On today's show, a lot of people are saying we didn't learn anything from Nico Harris's press conference. I disagree. I think we learned the Mavericks are not going after Kevin Durant. We'll tell you why in today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm going to get a city of life back.
Dogs, all of us, all five.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Still can't leave me alone.
Your team every day.
Gotta be born with the dog blood.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Dallas Mavericks for 10 years. Thanks for being an everydayer, making Locked On Mavs your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, my co-host, media member covering the Dallas Mavericks for 10 years, right alongside me, the big ball boy, the one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
A lot of mentioning of how big those body parts are over the past 24 hours. No, I want to get a Stars jersey. I'm trying to get all into hockey for this Dallas Stars run here in Dallas. So I shot out a tweet today. I'm like, who should I get? So leave a comment below if you're a Stars fan. Which player should I get? Which player is the safest to get? I don't need a Luka situation where I get somebody and then it's like 6 months later he's traded. I don't have that type of money. So
yeah, let us know. Or maybe you go Madonna, like maybe go safe with like the legend.
I'm kind of leaning that direction.
Like you might just do that. Or do they have generic? They should sell generic jerseys that are just like have the number one and just like no name on the back.
I don't know. I think those are kind of lame. But.
I know, but then you just have it. I used to buy those because at like Mitchell and Ness or something like that. Or
yeah,
there'd be stores like that where they would sell generic jerseys because I like couldn't afford the normal jerseys sometimes when I was a kid. Today's episode, we're going to talk about Nico Harrison's press conference. We did actually learn some things for it. We'll talk about the Mavs core, their free agency. Draymond Green called out Isaac Harris on his podcast. And so we'll talk about that and what that means for the Mavericks, actually. And then we learned that Anthony Davis and Dereck Lively don't need surgery. And so we'll talk about that and what that means for the Mavericks. So we'll get into all that. But let's start here. I think one of the things we did actually learn that was maybe unintended by Nico Harrison himself was that the Mavs, who are now just like big star hunting, it seems like, right? They bring in Kyrie, they trade for Anthony Davis, and now it's like, all right, what's the next move? Kevin Durant has been the next move that everybody's talked about for a while now. He seems to be the obvious next star in the NBA in general that's going to move. The Suns are definitely going to move him this summer, it seems like. They were going to move him at the trade deadline, even though he didn't know about it. Mark Stein has reported the Mavericks were not really into trading for Kevin Durant during the season, but then we said, okay, well, what if they do it during the offseason? They could definitely do it. They could go after it. It makes sense. They're going to have to replace Kyrie's scoring. But I think one of the things that Nico Harrison said in that presser, and maybe take it with a grain of salt, is he talked about their core being connected for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and it starts with the draft. He mentioned PJ, Lively, Gafford. Like he mentioned some of these guys that would have to be traded. Klay Thompson, that would have to be traded in order to get a Kevin Durant. And so maybe you don't believe Nico anymore. Maybe you're sitting in your position going, all right, well, whatever he says, I'm just not going to believe anymore because he said so many glowing things about Luka, and then look at where we are now. But I think that he kind of tipped his cap that the Mavericks are not going to go after Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're operating on the fact of like, hey, if this is how they're truthfully going to go about the offseason, which was referenced multiple times, then yeah, it did feel. I mean, you can only reference, this roster and how deep the roster is. He talked about the bench. How deep the bench is, at the same time, and talking about the core. So when referencing all of that, you can't help to draw the lines in between. Is this, does this show that they're not going to go swinging for a big trade? Now, reminder, Kevin Durant's not going to be a free agent. So this isn't a trying to create cap space type of thing. He has 1 year left on his deal, around $54 million, $55 million.
Yeesh.
So you got to match it. Now, they do have the salaries to get to that 55 number, but you're going to have to give up 4 of those guys at least. If you're not including Kyrie and AD, and let's just say Lively too. So is there a world in which you could package, players that are not those 3 players along with a draft pick or something to get Kevin Durant? Yes. But it just feels like the way he's talking. I think there's a world that, he could have took that question of, hey, we have Kyrie and AD to build around. That's our duo. That's our two cornerstone pieces, and we're always looking for the opportunity to add more talent. Like, I think that's an answer we've heard in the past of like, we're always talent hunting, we're always one bit, best basketball players, all this stuff. But that wasn't the answer or direction. It was praise about our depth and the bench.
Yes.
If we just get this roster healthy, and then referencing free agency and the draft to kind of round out the roster and stuff. So it does, for the time being, it did feel like a little nod to, I don't know if we're going to be chasing KD. Which,
yes, specifically his opening statement, he talked about that bench, like he just said. He said, our defense is our calling card, and we've got a really great bench that we've built here, and he just like, and they're going to be without Kyrie going into the season, so you'd think that wants to lean on depth. I think this is great to not go after Kevin Durant. I have been anti the Kevin Durant thing when it first came up. I was like, what the hell? Might as well do it. You've done this. Now let's see Kyrie, KD, and AD together, right? It's the Nets, except for you put AD instead of Harden. Like, all right, might as well see it. It could be
a little
fun.
bit different defensively there with
For
AD.
sure. Well, we might as well see what it looks like, right? But then when I started thinking about rationally, and you start to get away from the emotions, as we're a process oriented podcast here, you start to get through the emotions, and you realize,
Awesome.
all right, well, if they are going to try to win with this duo and this group. And so when you get past that emotion, you start to think, all right, how are they going to build around these two guys, AD and Kyrie? Well, they are injury prone. You're going to have as much depth as possible and just add a couple pieces. And maybe they probably won't be max level pieces because you don't want to trade some of your guys, but you got to add a couple of things here and there. And then Nico Harrison doubled and tripled down that this is a title contending team, like on its own, right? So I don't think he thinks that they're as far away as a lot of Mavericks fans think they are.
Yeah, it's almost like a bet on his part of like, hey, I kind of want to. I want to prove everybody right. Like, I want to show you that the vision, the vision for this team was right. And once all of these guys are healthy, then it's going to be a championship caliber team. So I think that's another part in all of this that points to not a KD run. This is the roster he put together, and he has been stuck. He's been constantly defending of like, well, this roster, it's just injuries. It's just injuries.
Yeah,
you can't judge me on the injuries.
Yeah.
So I think whether you want KD or not, it feels like everything's lining up for him just to like, hey, I want to fill out the roster with some other pieces, but the main, core pieces of the roster that I put together back healthy, they're going to, go for a title.
Yeah, they are. And so, I don't think they're going after KD. And I think we learned that. Are we reading in between the lines too much here? Or do you think he's,
it's freaking Nico Harrison. So like, and the Mavs also have, especially over the past 4 years, operated in silence, right? Like the KP trade happened right at the trade deadline. I remember I was in a meeting at work and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. Just different little things. The Mavs stuff hasn't leaked out over the past 3 or 4 years. Obviously the Luka trade.
Some of it should have.
It should have. But hats off to Rob though, for keeping it silent, keeping it quiet. It's just so professional. Not letting that get out for anybody.
It's great. It's great, dude. Dude, it's great.
Shout out to the elderly gentleman at the press conference. I don't know who he is, but he was like genuinely confused. He was like, "I'm just trying to figure out, why didn't you want this to get out? Like what?" And I was like, "Yes, I love you."
Yeah, well, but hey, I think we learned something, that the Mavericks are not going to go after Kevin Durant. They're not going to go big star hunting. They're not going to do the thing in the past that made Mavericks fans frustrated, right? The thing in the past that made Mavericks fans frustrated is they kept the plant powder. They kept, they tried to keep their powder dry for next season to try and go big star hunting in free agency or a big trade or something like that. And then they would strike out over and over again. Now they have different frustrations, but here we are.
Can I ask you a question? Who do you think the core is? Because he referenced that core. And the core, the 2 to 3 years and stuff. Who do you think the core is?
Well, he mentioned a couple times. He definitely mentioned Clay. He's mentioned, he mentioned that starting lineup: Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Lively, and AD.
I was gonna say, I don't think you mentioned anybody else outside of those 5.
I think you're right. I don't think he mentioned Najee. I don't think he mentioned who else would be on it. Gafford. Yeah, Najee and Gafford would be the only two other ones.
Yeah, or like Max Christie or
true. Yeah.
Like some of these other guys that got some Dinwiddie.
No,
but,
free agent.
Yeah, but it feels like that's the core. And to go back to that point, not to beat a dead horse here, but I'm not trying to. But it's like it feels like that core is that starting unit. And hey, I want to prove everybody right. Let's get that starting unit back on the court.
Let's actually see it.
And they'll be good. So the 2 to 3 years thing is fascinating because it feels like I think the issue. I think one of the biggest issues in this is probably Nico thinks he's part of the core of 2 to 3 years.
Well,
and
his deal goes 3 years too. That's part of this whole thing.
I know. And I feel like we've read so much reporting. So I'm sorry, but somebody wrote it that way too. Of when talking about the new Kyrie deal and the 3-year deal and stuff is, oh, well, that would align him up with AD and Nico's contract and stuff. Well, like one of the biggest issues in all this is that we're mentioning Nico in the same sentence with AD and Kyrie. Should not be this way, right? Like this is about the players and stuff. And this is another reason why the KD thing of like why the reason they would go for it is not just the connection with Nico, but KD, you bring him in that last year deal. Maybe you give him a 2-year extension to match up with Kyrie and AD and Nico. And also, to your point earlier, if Kyrie's going to be out for a while, how are you going to replace his scoring?
Yeah.
Is it through the depth of your team or the case of like you go out and get a Kevin Durant? It's like, oh, well, we have KD and AD that will hold down the fort until Kyrie gets back. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. It feels like it's going to be the depth of the roster. So I'm curious to see. And he did answer some questions about filling the void of Kyrie.
He did. But coming up, let's talk about his concerns in free agency because he doesn't have any. And Draymond Green called out Isaac Harris. What did he say? How does it connect to the Mavericks and all this? Talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA, and you can go to a Stars game. Isaac's talking about the Stars. Right now, you can go to Stars, use the Game Time picks, and they tell you the exact great the views from your seat, the best deals in the arena. There's lower bowl. There's one for $146 in section 123. I love that section. There's like right against the glass for like $228. You can get a ticket. This is game 5 and home. They shoot on that side of the ice twice in that game. And so if you want to go get Game Time, if you want to go get tickets to a Stars game, go do that. You could also get tickets to all kinds of other stuff, comedy, concerts, theater, all kinds of things like that. And with last minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, comedy, concert, theater. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first ticket. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Isaac, download Game Time today. Get your Stars tickets. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, what we call our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. We have a Locked On Mavs text line where you can get texts from us on rumors and all kinds of things over the offseason. We're going to do a ton of draft stuff. We'll send you our draft profiles. We'll send you rumors and any kind of trade talks that we hear. Well, obviously the lottery will be a big night that we'll have some stuff for. So there's tons of stuff in the text line. You can also do some Q&As with us, send us questions and all that. Text 214-643-8637 or check the links in the description. All right, Isaac. Nico Harrison. We played his clip yesterday on the show about free agency being the least of his concerns because a reporter asked him about, are you now concerned about free agents looking at the Mavericks and saying, well, you just traded this guy? And this is a question I wanted to ask, and so I'm glad it got asked. That look at the way Luka responded. He smashed his phone. He was crying at his, it was emotional at his return game and all that. And Mavs basically betrayed and abandoned send off their star player, their homegrown guy. And then Dirk is now distancing himself from the franchise. Are you concerned about free agency? And Nico Harrison said no, that he's not concerned. He said it was the least of his concerns because he mentioned Jason Kidd is a Hall of Fame player that's a head coach. Kyrie Irving, people want to play with him and things like that. First of all, do you buy that there are no concerns about free agency?
I do buy it. This is where I probably venture a little off course from how a lot of Mavs fans probably feel, but I've been pretty vocal about that. Of like, I don't think it's as big of a hit to to like bigger names around the league than what we might like assume or think. I've said multiple times that I think what Kyrie thinks of the Mavs does wonders for other big names around the league. So yeah, I still think players would come here. I still think players want to play with Kyrie and AD and stuff in Dallas. Dallas is a top 5 market, what, 4th or 5th as far as bigger market.
Yeah.
We know the tax stuff, whatever. I feel like I'm going back to the free agent days of. So
if only they had gotten Jake
Dwight Howard, and if Nick Batum comes over, so
Mike Conley and Whiteside together will fix this.
But no, I still think free agents will be very interested in coming to Dallas. Yeah.
My point yesterday was that I think for the free agents the Mavericks are going to go after, I don't think that the Luka trade will matter to them in that way because they're not the top level guys. You're not trying to convince, a Kevin Durant or a Giannis or, somebody like that to come and be like, all right, well, we're going to build our future around you. And for them to go, all right, you just said that about Luka, and then you traded him in the middle of the night with no warning to a place that he didn't necessarily want to go to explicitly. Now, Kyrie Irving could have that question, and that's a big thing. And if it affects Kyrie Irving's free agency decision, he's got a player option this summer. If it affects his decision, then it was a problem, right? And it definitely was. I'm going to guess it's not because I think the Mavericks will back up the Brinks truck for him, and then it'll really be.
It's great. It's great, broski. Bro, name it. It's great.
It will be great for him because he's going to get a bunch of money from
the Brinks doors on the back of that truck and give Kyrie, especially like recovering from an ACL, and how glowingly that they have spoken about Kyrie and just backed him and empowered him and everything. And then they hand him a massive contract with the hey, it doesn't matter the injury, we're still going to give you a massive deal too. I think that will mean something to players around the league.
Yeah, right. And I think you're right that Kyrie's word probably carries farther. He's got more relationships, Team USA, all that around the league. Also, there's another player, all-star player, defensive player of the year type player that is taken up for Nico Harrison and going against your boy Isaac Harris. Let's hear from Draymond Green on his podcast about a recent question that was asked at a press conference.
Asked him why he shouldn't be fired.
That's crazy to ask somebody. He should have asked the reporter, why do you have a job?
You be fired?
Why, you don't ask somebody that.
I would have pulled up one of
But you know what that is to me, though? Those reporters that I don't like, that's the definition of kicking somebody while they down. And like why shouldn't you be fired? Like, what do you mean? Why shouldn't I be fired? Like, what have you done more than I've done that you shouldn't be fired?
Right.
That's whack. Stop
that was super whack.
That's clownish.
Let Nico live in his peace, man. Let him live in his decision, Nico. Empower yourself. Move on. Make the
Isaac, let Nico live in his peace. Let him live in his peace.
Let Nico live in his peace.
Baron Davis at the end there.
I mean, I've always defended Draymond.
You've wanted Draymond on the Mavs for so long, even longer than I wanted him on the Mavs.
Yeah. So somebody sent me this clip today, and I started dying laughing. Yeah. I mean, 20,000 people aren't lined up chanting "Fire Isaac." So I think I still feel like it's a valid
today.
Definitely were a couple today. Yeah, but I just, of course the player's gonna back a guy like Nico. They don't know all the the situation either. They just see a clip on it. They don't understand the fan base reaction to it either, as far as like being in Dallas the whole time. So Draymond has a relationship with Nico. So
yeah, I'll just leave this up on the. I'll just throw this out there that Draymond Green is a Nike athlete and just returned to Nike recently, and so I don't know if that has anything to do with swaying him in any possible way. But
I do. I mean, I did joke that I was going to add to all of my bios everywhere, even at the church, that Draymond Green called me a clown.
He did.
But yeah, I mean,
but he's taking up for Nico.
Yeah, he's taking up for Nico, but it does show an example of like what players around the league still feel about Nico. Like they're still and there's still, the relationships there with Nico. That's why he was hired, is because of the relationships and stuff. So maybe if he asked, if Draymond, he's asking why shouldn't I be fired, I could just relay it to my boss at Locked On, the channel manager.
It's hard to come up with reasons.
But hey, open invite though to Draymond. If he wants to come on Locked On Mavs or have me on the show with him and Baron Davis, we can talk while I ask the question. I'll definitely stand my ground there. So
there you go. Or you could go on Locked On Warriors, Draymond, if you want to do that. You can do whichever one you want, whichever one you want to complain on. Open invite for Draymond. But yeah, that was Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors, by the way, saying clownish behavior for saying what everybody has been saying, what everybody has been asking. And honestly, not to take your thunder, but the question was already asked in the secret closed door meeting. Tim McMahon started it all off by saying, fans have been chanting fire Nico. Why should Patrick Dumont not take you up on the offer? That's the same exact question, except for you stated it out loud and to him.
No
in front of a
cameras
camera.
were present.
And there was no cameras, right? So again, it goes back to, it's just clips. It's just that they see the out of context, and it is what it is to them. I
don't care though. There's plenty of things that I do care about, or that stings a little or hurts or something. That one did nothing. So I thought it was funny. I was like, cool, cool, Draymond.
Coming up, we learned something else about the Mavericks. There's concerns that Anthony Davis and Lively were going to need surgery. According to Nico Harrison, we think they both won't need it. What does that mean for the Mavs? Talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Amazon Fire Stick TV. Man, you can do a lot of things with an Amazon Fire Stick. Did you know your Fire Stick is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. You know, Amazon, you know what I think about. You can take any of those words and put them in any order. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into a bunch of different titles. EA Sports College Football, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Avowed, a bunch of different games like that. Go check it out. Endless entertainment. It's a 4K streaming device as well. You can get all kinds of movies, Netflix, Prime Video, Disney, Max, all those different streaming services you can get now. But if you want to take it on the go and play Xbox games, you can absolutely do that. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube. Get yours today. Again, that's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. We're talking about Nico Harrison's press conference again, but we're talking about the things we actually learned about the Mavericks kind of going forward now in this. And one of the things that he was asked, Christian Clark of The Athletic asked Nico straight up, will Anthony Davis need surgery this offseason? And Nico said, no, he won't. He finished the season fine. Awesome. Yeah. That's great. I was concerned about that. The way he looked, the way that he looked like he was kept getting injured, and maybe this is something we're just going to have to get used to with Anthony Davis, is that the Luka boo-boos I used to talk about, where it looks like he's out for the season, and then he just pops back up and then plays the rest of the game. Maybe the AD boo-boos will be following us this year too, because it looks like he's done a bunch of times. He left the game early from that playing game against the Grizzlies. He left the first half early against the Grizzlies, and you just go, man, how can he keep going? It just looks like he's on his last leg, and he was getting treatment on both of his legs during the game and all that.
How many of those injuries are contact injuries though?
It's a good question. It's worth asking.
Yeah. No, I think it's huge. I mean, anytime you don't want your players to have surgeries and stuff. I mean, last year, Kyrie was like, oh, he broke his hand. Now he's going to have surgery in the offseason. You're like, dang it. You just want these guys to be able to have a full offseason and stuff. So I was scared about it. I was scared about were they waiting for the summer to have surgery for AD and the adductor stuff, or is Lively gonna end up having a surgery this coming summer and stuff like that. So I was fully expecting that. So for Nico to come out and not even leave a hey, we're still evaluating, or we'll see what happens over the next month or so, it was pretty definitively like, hey, he's not going for Anthony Davis.
I was going to say, for Anthony Davis, he said, no, he won't be. He finished the season fine. On Lively, he was asked specifically, will Lively need surgery? He said, I don't believe he will either, and kind of hesitated on that one. And so that one, I'm not completely closing the door on it, but it did seem, I mean, that's positive, right? If he doesn't believe that he's going to need surgery, it's not a definite, hey, he absolutely needs surgery.
Well, it probably depends on who he talked to in the medical department.
I mean, it probably does at this point. If you read that Tim McMahon article about all that and how they missed Lively's ankle fracture.
That shows the strength of that team, though, is when you can find your mistakes and have people who can disagree and then try to fact check stuff. That shows how strong that team is.
How many sarcastic jokes can we throw on this episode? How many ways can we just say the exact same words that he said in that press conference? I feel like we could do it for anything.
We literally could do it for like an hour. I made a joke to Nick the other day. I was like, we used to do this thing, which shout out. Y'all can let us know in the comments if you remember this. We used to do this thing at the end of each year called the Mavs Academy Awards. And we like put on a whole show and acted like we were hosting. I mean, the Majestic opened up for us for a couple years there.
No, Isaac, we were at the Majestic Theater.
Sounds like you're in a bathroom stall. But Majestic had us there for a couple years. We had that locked down, but we just opted away from it. But it was a really fun pod and stuff. But this year, if we had the Mavs Academy Awards this year,
my gosh,
I don't even know if we could make it through all of it.
We would do like best quote of the year, best game of the year, best
worst decision of the year.
Worst decision. Yeah. We do a lot
One
of things,
nominee.
A lot of things like that. I don't know. How would you even get it? But back to the Mavs health, that I think this is such a positive because the Mavs, they just need to get healthy and they need to have one healthy offseason, take a drink, play that game again. But to have a healthy offseason for this team, I also think we learned, Nico mentioned that they didn't practice. I knew that they didn't practice a lot, but he said they didn't practice at all the whole end of the season, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people probably don't understand is like the travel schedule and how it doesn't allow time for any type of practice stuff. That whenever they do have a practice a day and we get that email, it's like, Mavs have practice tomorrow. Here's the time to show up for media. It's like, whoa, they have practice.
Yeah.
What is practice? And so it's just like, they don't get a chance to do that. They can have some like walkthroughs and different things or like shoot around on game day, it's stuff, but it's just not the same as a practice, especially whenever you're upending your roster and stuff. I think somebody even asked him at the presser, like, do you think it was fair to Jason Kidd that you just swapped out, you changed a whole different, like I had a question on mine. I had a list of questions if we just got to ask how many ever questions we wanted, but what's the difference between building around AD and Luka? Because it feels like for the past 3 or 4 years, we've heard him talk about the things they needed around Luka. Yeah. And now if your philosophy is changing and now you have Anthony Davis, what does that change? Does it change anything with what you're trying to build around? Does it? Yeah, anything. Does it change what you're looking for in like your big rotation? We've talked about Lively and Gafford and stuff before and the role that they play with Luka. Now, do you try to find like another like pick and pop guy instead of 2 rim rollers? I just don't know. It feels like you shouldn't change too much of your of what you go after. We know they're going to go after defense. Defense wins championships. Didn't know if you knew that one.
Defense does win championships.
But we know that they're going to go after defenders. We know that they're going to go after these tough-minded players. But they have to figure out what's the Kyrie void. And he was asked about that, of like how you're going to fill the Kyrie scoring void in the backcourt. He mentioned free agency. He mentioned the draft. He mentioned the draft multiple times. At one point, one of the answers he said, and it starts with the draft.
Yeah.
So the really value in his opening statement, he talked about the draft pick and getting a really like his deep draft. We're going to get a guy in here. So it feels like they're operating, reading between the lines here, that 11th pick, or if it moves up higher, is going to be somebody in the rotation. So,
or at least on the roster.
Yeah. And I would be shocked or it feels like there's players around that spot that are backcourt guys that could help in that that range. Not saying you're going to draft somebody like a Jeremiah Fears to start on day one, which I think Fears is a really good player, but still, I think it's, yeah, it feels like it's around the edges with the draft and and free agency.
There's a lot of names in there. I've been starting to go through. I've been compiling like, all right, which draft profiles do we need? And there are going to be some guys in that range, some wings, some guards, definitely some lead guards. Like you mentioned, Fears. There's Nolan Traore. There's a bunch of people in that range. I think that will help the Mavericks. Demon. Yeah, maybe not the connection there. Maybe not Real Madrid.
I like Demon. I was just joking that
he's a real
his agent's Bill Duffy. So
yeah.
But also the free agency part too. Where does relationships come into play is whenever there's a guy that could get a little bit more money, but maybe the relationship and the appeal to play with Kyrie and AD and some of these guys and play for Jason Kidd appeals more. Like, do they go out? They try to I'm not advocating for this, but do they try to get D'Angelo Russell to come here for super cheap until Kyrie comes back? Once again, I'm not advertising it, but
don't advertise it. Don't even advocate for it.
No, but like a Malcolm Brogdon, a Bruce Brown, Chris Paul, some of these guys that it's like, hey, can you help hold down the fort? And at one point he said, you can't replace Kyrie Irving. It's going to be by committee and these different guys. So because of your relationships, do you go out this offseason and bring in a Chris Paul, draft a Jeremiah Fears, bring back Dante Exum? And it's like, hey, the combination of those three guys, can you hold down Brandon Williams? Can you hold down the fort until Kyrie comes back? That's the type of stuff that I could very well see them doing this offseason.
Jason Kidd, every game next year will go, all right, do I go with the old guy, the young guy, the the big guy, the small guy? Who do I go with here? Who's working in this scenario?
That's for Jason Kidd to figure out. So
that is for Jason Kidd. We'll have a lot of stuff to talk about all through the summer. There's reports that Jason Kidd is upset about the Nico Harrison trade of Luka Doncic and up ending his team in the middle of the season. There's a lot of different things like that.
There's some Jason Kidd grumblings out there right now.
I'm gonna say there's some stuff we can talk about that. Obviously, we'll do draft stuff all through the offseason. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. We have a newsletter that goes to your inbox, your email daily, lockedondaily.com. You can go get that newsletter for us. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.